joining us, Fox News legal analyst. His book is out Monday, The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton, Frame Donald Trump. You can get it right now for pre-sale. You'll get it next week in the mail, Amazon.com. Sara Carter's with us, Fox News contributor and investigative reporter. I think what Devin Nunes is saying is 1,000% right, but it's still July. These elections don't take place till November. They still have the power of subpoena. They do have the ability to stop the obfuscation and obstruction that's been going on here. We keep hearing that they're drawing up articles of impeachment, but nothing seems to happen. Sarah, what's the latest?
Well, the latest is that the serious threats that they've been pushing from Congress need to be taken on by all congressional members. We've seen a failure on some of the congressional members, particularly those that have played significant roles like Trey Gowdy and others, back away from the enforcing impeachment on Rod Rosenstein. Remember, I said before, Sean, that Rod Rosenstein was waiting this out. He was going to hedge his bets, Congress wouldn't do anything. And there's a failure in Congress to work together. I think Nunes is doing the best that he can do. I agree with him wholeheartedly that they're waiting until November. But let's just look at the people that he is calling on, that he will be subpoenaing to speak before Congress. When you think about this, Joe Pientka, remember, he was the second FBI agent that was with Peter Strzok when they interviewed Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who was the former NSA, National Security Advisor to President Trump. They really need to speak with Joe Pientka because he's the only other person that was in the room at that time that can talk about what happened, particularly with General Flynn, both during the interview and afterwards at FBI headquarters when both he and Peter Strzok confronted McCabe and other leadership about that interview. Other people that are really interesting is Tashina Gohar. She is on the list. Nunes is subpoenaing her. She's a name that we don't hear about much. She is basically the right-hand person to Rod Rosenstein. And why is she important? Because Tashina Gohar actually worked for Sally Yates. She was working very closely. She was Sally Yates' right-hand person at the Department of Justice. Now she's with Rod Rosenstein. She has a lot of information, both from the time she was with Sally Yates up until now that she is with Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. And I've also been told by a number of sources that Rod Rosenstein considers her essential to his investigations, considers her essential to the Department of Justice. In fact, somebody that he can't do without. But I can tell you this, there are a lot of people interested in the role that she played, the access that she's had to a lot of this information, the role that she continues to play right now at the Department of Justice, and they want to question her. Now, whether or not the DOJ will allow the questioning of people within the DOJ is another battle altogether, but the over 40 people that Nunes has put on that list are very important people, all of them.
It's unbelievable. Let me move on to the story broken by our friend John Solomon, and a couple of very key points we discover in this piece. According to Solomon, Lisa Page is telling, and you reported this too, Sarah, that House investigators, that her boyfriend, the FBI's most vehement anti-Trump or biggest Trump hater, Peter Strzok, didn't really believe that there was any real evidence that President Trump had colluded with the Russians. And the one FBI text message on the probe should alarm every American citizen. And the piece goes on to say it's no longer in dispute that Strzok and Page held an animus for Donald Trump, who was the subject of their Russia probe, or that they openly discussed using the powers of their office to stop Trump and then the insurance policy, but stop him from becoming president. The only question was whether any official acts they took in the Russia collusion probe were driven by those sentiments. And the Justice Department Inspector General now is endeavoring to answer those questions. But anyway, he points out there are just 5 words among the thousands of suggestive texts of Page and Strzok that were exchanged, and there's no big there. And the date of that text has been of intrigue to many investigators because it's 2 days after Rod Rosenstein named the special counsel Robert Mueller to oversee an investigation into alleged collusion between Trump and the Russia campaign. And since the text was turned over to Congress, investigators wondered whether it referred to the evidence against the Trump campaign. Well, now, according to reports we're getting, Page, during a closed-door interview with lawmakers, confirmed in the most pained and contorted way that the message, in fact, referred to the quality of the Russia case, according to multiple eyewitnesses. In other words, the admission is extraordinarily revealing and consequential, because that would mean Rosenstein unleashed the most awesome abuse of power investigation of a special counsel to investigate an allegation that even Trump-hating FBI officials thought there was no there on, and they're the ones that have been investigating it. What does that mean legally, Greg Jarrett?
Well, John Solomon's right, and that's consistent with other reports we're getting, that Lisa Page testified in deposition that some of these Peter Strzok messages sent to her meant exactly what they said. No there. That's exactly what I argue for 300 pages in my book, that this is an investigation in search of a crime, which the law, by the way, does not allow. There was never any evidence of a crime. There was never any intelligence to justify a counterintelligence probe. And they knew it. They knew that dossier was completely fabricated, but they decided that they were going to use it anyway as a pretext to launch this dilating probe of Trump to prevent him from becoming president. And then when he succeeded, they continued with it to try to destroy him. That's exactly what happened. And no, there. Peter Strzok knew that there was no legitimate evidence against Trump. Rosenstein knew it. He appointed Mueller anyway. How many of all of the people that have been indicted for collusion? Zero, because there never was any evidence of collusion. So these other indictments are all smoke and mirrors by Mueller and Rosenstein to try to justify themselves.
Where do you guys see this investigation? If you had to make a prediction today, reports in the Washington Post say that, well, now Mueller's team wants to begin to wrap up. They'd hand anything else that was left over to the Department of Justice. What would that mean? That ends up with either an interview or no interview with the president. They write a report. It sounds horrible. And then Rudy Giuliani writes a counter report. Is that how it ends? Or does Mueller want to keep this alive for another 3 years?
Well, all he has to do, Sean, is create a disinformation campaign. It's the same type of campaign that we've seen coming from former CIA Director John Brennan, the same type of campaign that Comey has been a part of, and all of these other ex-Obama officials that they've been pushing out there, rumors and lies not based on facts, which is so interesting because their job required them to be all about fact-based findings. But instead, they utilize rumors and innuendos to spread lies about their own president, about the president of the United States. What was really interesting to me, I spent the day with talking with George Papadopoulos' wife, Simona, and talking about what they've been through as a family and how the FBI handled them. Well, in order to get that guilty plea, they threatened Papadopoulos with almost everything they could. The family is pretty much bankrupted because of this, and they then threatened him with being an Israeli spy. They said, well, we're going to bring charges against you that you were an Israeli spy. It was just one thing after another, until he finally pled guilty, to one count of lying because he didn't know where to go. His sentencing hearing comes up in September. So these are people, and you have to ask yourself this, just like Greg said, if they knew there was no there, why did they keep pursuing it? What were they trying to achieve? And if their ultimate goal was to achieve either an impeachment of a president, a duly elected president of the United States based on false lies, or in an attempt to stop this person from ever becoming president, then you have to ask yourself, what is that on the big grand scheme of things? Is that a soft coup? Was that what they were attempting to alter an election?
We already know the answer, that they had a favored candidate that should have been indicted, that they saved from indictment by rigging the investigation, and then they turned their sights to malign and smear and even use Hillary Clinton bought and paid for Russian lies to even get FISA warrants. There was no level of the law was followed. It was all hands on deck to elect Hillary at any cost. And they just can't believe they lost, because if she won, none of this would have come out. It's not like she would have been mad. They did all this to help her. All right, we'll take a break. More with Greg and Sara on the other side here. All right, wrapping up our final moments with Greg Jarrett and Sara Carter. So if Devin Nunes is right, and now the Department of Justice is looking at the hopes that the Democrats will have this blue wave that seemed to be receding, but I guess anything can happen in an election, and I don't count my chickens before they hatch, but if they got control of the House of Representatives, every one of these investigations would die. That would happen. In other words, the Democrats would bury it all, and that means the deep state would get off the hook yet once again. Is that's what they're now delaying for? And why would the Republicans allow them to delay that long? Greg?
Well, this is the old Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope, the 1974 Rumble in the Jungle. You put up your fists and you try to draw out the opponent with exhaustion and fatigue, and they're running out the clock, and that's exactly what they're doing. But, frankly, one of the reasons why I published my book, I worked very hard to get it done so that it would get out by next week, is because I want people over the next month or two to read that book. And I'm convinced that if they do, they will realize that Donald Trump was completely victimized by the FBI and the Department of Justice, that he is the victim, not the villain here, and they'll be angry about it, and they will not want to return to Congress a lot of Democrats, and, the Republican red wave will consume the blue wave.
It's going to be interesting. Final thoughts, Sarah.
Well, I certainly hope that doesn't happen, Sean. I think we need answers. I think the American people deserve those answers, and I'm counting on Greg's book to make that happen.
Yeah, we all are. It's out next week. You don't want to miss it. The Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump, bookstores everywhere. You can get it now on Amazon.com. It's out Monday. All right, thank you both.